What's up, guys, and welcome to the theScore eSports podcast. I'm your host, Colin. With me in the booth, we got Daniel Rosen.
Hello.
And I am excited today, Dan, because we have an awesome guest. Coming up in just a moment, we've got James Bardolph. You guys probably know him for his sort of front-facing duties as a caster, a host, and an analyst in the world of CSGO. He's also the creative director for FACEIT. And before we get him on, Dan, I just want to say one thing. I want to say, everybody in the comment section, we got James Bardolph. Make some noise in this bitch. Okay, I'm done.
Very good, very good.
Hi, James. How are you?
Was that up to snuff?
It was all right. I respect the effort. It's pretty good.
That's all I can hope for. It's my first try. I'll do better next time, I promise.
James,
yeah, I'm good, thank you. I just ran to the office and delayed the whole start of this thing. I had a prototype for something arrive, which I really wanted to grab before, well, ASAP, so I had to grab that. I can't tell you what it is, but it's pretty good.
Was it one of
It's major related, but I'll say that much, but there we go.
Ooh, okay. I was going to guess it's one of your very fine keyboards that you're often tweeting about.
No, well, no comment. It's not a keyboard, I will say that much.
Excellent, excellent.
Before we get into all our actual questions, last time I think I talked to you very briefly a while ago regarding some stuff around ECS, and I didn't get a chance to ask you this because we had about 10 minutes, and I want to ask you this time, how is your Zangief these days, James?
Well, the thing is, I don't really play Street Fighter V. I was a Street Fighter 4 guy. Even when Ultra came out, I didn't really bother to play. I couldn't be asked to learn a new mechanic, and now it's like I pretty much only, unless I'm traveling on a plane, then I've got my Switch out. I pretty much only play Counter-Strike. So the dilemma is like, do I want to play this X game, or do I want to play Counter-Strike? And like for a fighting game, if I wanted to learn Street Fighter V, for example, I'd have to put in 100 hours plus. And at the same time, I'm like playing in the UK circuit and trying to move up in from division to division. So I can't really justify investing that much time into playing. So there is no Zangief, unfortunately, for Street Fighter V. But I was a big fan of Bison as well. And my good friend Problem X, who's sponsored by Mousesports, he's a Bison player, and he's tearing it up at the moment. So I'm living vicariously through him. So I don't need to even play so much myself.
Yeah, Problem X is actually doing spectacular right now, which has been great to see. I've been a fan of his since 4, actually. I think he made Capcom Cup a couple times. He's great. I remember seeing years ago when I was just a fan. I remember seeing interviews with you like on YouTube and stuff, and I was just like, oh, I have a chance to ask about Zangief, so I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I wish I'd learned enough, but I just can't justify the time to myself to do it, unfortunately. So.
Well, you know what, James? That is what the anniversary collection is for, right?
You know what? I've got that, and funnily enough, I have something right here. So this is let me get it out. This little thing here is called the Brook switch. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah, I have one in my stick.
Yeah, so I have my joystick just up there, and I need to solder this into it. This actually lets you play on a Nintendo Switch.
Oh, cool.
Which is really cool. So you can plug you get a printer cable, the USB Type-C on the other end, and you can use your stick in a Nintendo Switch. So the thing is, I was like, yeah, anniversary edition is going to be great. But then I was like, playing with these fiddly little things, and it's not going to be great, is it? I mean, if I was a pad player, it might help, but I'm a stick player. So really, it's like you buy it and you hype it and stuff, and you're like, holy crap, I'm going to hate myself if I play this all the time. So if I get my stick involved, then I could play wirelessly with some people who also have sticks, but otherwise it's probably going to suck, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. Dan, as much as I do want to hear more about Street Fighter, I happen to be wearing a Street Fighter shirt for this podcast randomly. I am going to move the discussion in the direction of Counter-Strike. So sorry for that. I wanted to ask James, so you guys at FACEIT have been awarded the next major. You're going to be hosting it in London. Super excited about that. One thing I want to pick your brain about is that us, from the fan perspective, all we ever hear is, okay, XTO has the next major. Here's the date. Here's the location. Or here's the rumor. ESL is going to host the next major in 2019. But we don't actually know anything about that process. Are you able to tell us how you go about fighting for a major and how it goes about being awarded to you?
Sure. Valve will tender for pitches essentially for people who want to do majors. So various companies, PGL, ESL, whoever else, will put a presentation together. Think of like a PowerPoint presentation basically, and say, we would like to host a major. This is the location. This is the stadium or arena or whatever we want to host it in. And I suppose the key points, you could lay out how you want to do the minors, if they're going to be by third parties or if you're going to do them yourself, how the players are going to be treated, and whatever other requirements they might have. You detail, I suppose, the stage and any gimmicks. I think there was a big there was a big period of time, especially with all the stuff that PGL was putting out periodically. It was like, okay, we need to do this gimmick to stand a chance, which we didn't particularly lean towards ourselves. But I'm sure each presentation, or most presentations, would have like this particular gimmick. This is going to be the thing that makes it stand out from all the others, and blah blah blah. And you try to pitch to them. I mean, maybe they would come back to you. Actually, I'm not sure about this part, because I'm not like the head of the person doing that. I will contribute to it, but when it comes to sending it and the correspondence, I'm busy doing other stuff. So, I mean, they'll give you feedback regardless of if they pick you or not. But I suppose they might ask questions about this or that if there's something you wanted to know or more about, or something that wasn't quite covered. So basically, you would put a presentation together, cover some key points, add whatever else you want, and goes from there basically.
Huh, that's very interesting. Sometimes you get the sort of feeling that Valve is so hands-off, so shadowy. It's interesting to hear that they give you feedback regardless of whether they choose you for the major or not.
Well, I think everybody wants everything to succeed, if you know what I mean. So it's not like they're going to just give you like a one-word answer or something. It might be that you were, say, the second choice for something, and who knows, maybe the first choice, sometimes things don't really work out necessarily when you get into it, so you need your backup. So it's just, if everybody else is improving, then when it comes time to pick those people, should you pick them, then it's going to make for a better product overall. So it's worthwhile to give some feedback.
Makes sense. Rising tide, all ships, that kind of thing. Now, if I were a TO and I were going to host the next major, I want to host the Toronto Major here at theScore eSports, what would you advise me to highlight in my presentation?
Well, let's see where to start. Let's say the location first. You want, within reason being what you can afford, right? You want it to be a good venue. It needs to it needs to be a good location, an accessible location, both for national and international people. And you need to have a good idea as to hotel availability, proximity, and you need to be able to be ready to give guidance on that kind of thing. So that's location out of the way. I suppose you need to ask yourself what is going to make your event special, prestigious, in the line of history. What is going to add to the heritage of what already exists. From that point of view, player treatment is important. Fail safes are important as well. Contingency plans, worst case scenarios. Once you have a presentation, you should look at everything that can be a potential disaster and have a plan in place. Like, let's say you want to do something special with, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what's happened in the previous. Let's say you use a custom HUD, for example. What happens if your HUD crashes? What are you going to have in place? These are questions that you should ask yourself before you get to a meeting, for example, and they say, okay, so what happens if this doesn't go the way you plan? What are you going to do then? You need to have contingency for all those kind of things. You need to have plan B. How you manage the qualifiers would be important. I think it's become more important now as well, online and offline. And online being where they're hosted and so on, offline being things like visas and so on, how those will be managed. So I think those are the kind of ideas that you need to have a handle on.
we've been talking a little bit about, or I guess a lot about, this sort of like, big picture stuff, and something interesting you mentioned there is, you have to tell Valve, what's going to make your major special. And I guess I want to ask, for you specifically, what's going to make the FACEIT Major special? What's going to make the London Major special?
I think the easy answer is the people. I think London, if you think about it being a hub in Europe, how multicultural London itself is, never mind how easy it is for people to visit, but you've already got people from all nations here, be it studying, traveling, living, whatever. So that is going to be special in itself. I think London is a must-have in terms of big venues or big locations for any tour of Counter-Strike. And I think it hasn't been, obviously DreamHack came and went, but I think it hasn't been because there wasn't, like, you had to build it for them to come, which is basically what we did with ECS. And I think that has implications for the whole of the United Kingdom as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be in London, but London is obviously a great start. It's an iconic location, and I think that has a lot to do with the heritage. For example, I remember when the UFC came to the UK for the first time, it was in the Royal Albert Hall. So they understood. I mean, they understand the importance of the location. They understand the importance of heritage and so on. So they somehow managed to get it in there. So I think that's pretty important. Wembley has a lot of history as well, obviously, with the FA Cups and so on. We're just next door in the arena, which also has its own history. If you ever make it there, you can see all the frames, pictures in the hall. So I think location in terms of London itself, in terms of the people, the accessibility, I think those are all really important factors. I think because it's such a big city in terms of press and things like that, I think it's definitely an exclamation mark on the whole of Europe. And moving forward with visas and things like that, and trying to have something more established for esports, which I would say is lacking at the moment. I think London has the impact, has the scale, has the urgency and the importance to help those kind of movements go forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember talking to Paul, to Red Eye. We've been talking a couple times about sort of his efforts to make, to sort of work on London's esports scene, and it's interesting to hear that coming from you too. It seems like it's a concerted effort from a lot of folks in that space.
Yeah, I know Paul was working at Gfinity for a while. They're another company who work in London. Obviously, you've got ESL who do things out of Leicester and did Dota in Birmingham and so on. So I think iSeries was always a good example to me. I went to iSeries a few times as a Counter-Strike player, and one tournament I went, I think we had something like 130 teams playing in the LAN there. It was so big that I had to put a tent outside the main venue to fill with Counter-Strike players and so on. So I think if you have that many people playing just your UK LAN, then I think there's definitely room there for the viewership. We had Rocket League finals the same weekend as the ECS finals, and I think it was a League of Legends thing they had in London before. So definitely the people are here. It's just about the awareness. I think partly building it. The more events you have, the more everything will rise, the more attention it will have from people who just don't know but would be interested, from the general public. You see BBC getting involved. So there's a lot of growth to be had here in the UK.
James, I don't know how familiar you are with the content we produce here at theScore eSports, but we do a lot of historically pointed video stuff, and one such project we're working on right now is, or we will be working on soon rather, is going to be about Cloud9's win at the last major, which you of course casted the grand finals of along with DDK. And I wanted to ask you a couple questions about that. First and foremost, what the scene was like when you were sitting in that stadium in Boston and the U.S. team won on U.S. soil for the first time a CSGO major.
The scene was pretty interesting. It was quite challenging, actually. It was a unique challenge in that obviously a lot of people won't really pay attention to the layers of commentary or a scenario of finals, for example, right? So from our point of view, our job is to commentate the finals. Our job is to keep it exciting, but our job is also to keep the crowd engaged in what is going on. And because they are, we with the crowd are creating the atmosphere, and the players need to feed off that atmosphere, not just the people at home, right? So it was very unusual because the crowd was extremely biased towards Cloud9, which is fine. That's not unusual. The bias is not unusual, but just how far to one side it was hilarious, to the point where even when Guardian's wife and Reigns' girlfriend came on the camera, they were being booed. It was very wrestling, and I love wrestling, so I'm all about that. But what was the challenge was, obviously if Cloud9 did something, then it was very easy to play off the crowd were into it and so on. But if FaZe did something, then the crowds, like, sometimes Cloud9 would get close to doing something and then FaZe would stop them, and that's one thing. So you can hear the kind of disappointment and, oh my god, that was so close on that. But if there's a round where, say, FaZe just dominate them and just wipe them out, the crowd are just dead. It was like Japanese MMA crowd. It was really curious. So in those moments, you kind of, and it's okay to have that sometimes, but at the same time, you need to control how much of that there is and make sure that there isn't too much. But it was the crowd basically wouldn't engage anything relating to FaZe at all. So you had to use Cloud9 things to keep the noise in the atmosphere there, which meant that we had to lean towards one side as well, just to keep the crowd active on their feet and being vocal. So that was an interesting challenge. I think the story of Cloud9 winning the major was a perfect story. If you're invested in the people, for me, especially with Skadoodle being the quiet type as well, like I'm a big Skadoodle fan. I love Skadoodle. His story, going to the finals and winning the finals. Stewie's story when he was humble and talking about the struggle with his family, with his parents and so on. There was really a lot of huge storylines going on, and Cloud9 are a team who've always been loved. So Cloud9, in the absence of like Nothing and Shroud, beloved ex-players of the team and so on, they're just it's a huge brand, and they are the team you would want to win a major. And I think it was an unlikely story as well, but again, the whole thing was just in terms of storytelling, it was perfect. And I don't mean the final, I mean the entire thing. Just as an example of why esports is so amazing, I think you can make a huge video about all the intertwining storylines in that. Sorry, hay fever is wrecking me right now.
It's quite amazing.
So for me, that was absolutely amazing. The way in which they almost lost the Inferno, it went to overtime, it was just the nature in which some of those rounds were won. There was I have asthma, so that's partly why I'm coughing, because I always forget to take my bloody steroid pump and my lungs start going nuts every now and then. But there was one round, the round which ended up, I had normally Dan and I tried to have a fast back and forth, but in one particular round, I was speaking for about a minute because there was so much happening towards A. I was keeping an eye on the clock. They were slowly moving towards the B bomb site, phase that is. They were running out of time. Stewie was periodically entrusted with holding down B on his own, and they would stack forward towards the A site. He was there on his own with the AWP. They had FaCe had time pressure. There wasn't enough time for them to check and clear the site properly and plant the bomb. Risks had to be taken. Stewie exploited that, just absolutely ruined them. It was crazy. So that was a very long passage of commentary for me. And when I was finished, at the end of the round, my heart was beating like this, because they really needed some oxygen in my body. So Dan took over, and I was just taking big, slow breaths. I was like, holy crap, I haven't really had my heart pumping like that before. And it wasn't adrenaline, it was just pure need of oxygen. So that was interesting. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I haven't had an asthma attack since I was a child. So I was like, okay, I'm just focusing on that for a while. But it was great. The crowd were really into it. I mean, the passion was there. And there's something special about North American audiences, and I haven't felt that kind of passion since Columbus. MLG Columbus, which is maybe still my favorite major, because that really felt like a festival. But it was, I really think it was a perfect storyline of Counter-Strike. And afterwards, I was absolutely elated. Just for the game of Counter-Strike, to have that story play out, you could not ask for more.
That particular round you're describing, if I'm not mistaken, that's the one where you made the call. They're trying to build the pyramids, but there's no more clay.
Yeah, that's the round.
Yeah. That one I've watched a lot since that happened, and that call sticks in my head. And actually, that brings me to something I was going to ask you a little later on in our cast, but I might as well bring it up now, which is, do you, when you have moments like that, trying to build a pyramid's no more clay, the roast beef sandwich, are these preconceived, or do you come in and you're just like, I've got it, let me go?
I think, like, for the most part, it's just a flow of consciousness. I think I don't know how to really explain it. I think you just have to have a way of thinking constantly. It just has to be part of your personality. Like, I just say some wild stuff on a regular, as most people will attest to. I think the biggest flow of consciousness I had was when Taz, I think he Molotov 3 or 4 TSM plays on Inferno at a Star Series, and I had like sometimes I'll be like in a Steam room or something. I don't know why, but Steam rooms in particular, I just I get a lot of inspiration from. So something might pop into my head, and I think, okay, that'll be cool. I'll try and use that later. So, for example, when I said, oh, it's a Sunday roast, I was like, okay, if someone gets killed by a Molotov, right, and it's a Sunday, it would just be great to say it was like a Sunday roast. It's just an easy pun. But it was actually on a Saturday, but I said it anyway. And then everything after that, I was just thinking, like, what do you have on the plate on a Sunday roast in England? Because I quite like, I don't know if you've been to London, but there's a place in Richmond, on Richmond Hill, there's this pub which just looks over the River Thames. It's just like a beautiful scene. And sometimes I'll go there and have a Sunday roast. I'm thinking, what's on a Sunday roast? I'm just describing what's on a Sunday roast, basically. So sometimes it's some inspiration that you just had somewhere. But for the most part, it's like, if you try too hard to kind of chisel something in, it will just seem forced. So I think things have to be natural for the most part. And you can have a short quip. I know some other guys as well will have some short quips or some short rhymes, and that's cool. Yeah, so I'll have some inspiration here and there. I think it's my job, so I'm always, thinking or reviewing or thinking how I could have done this or that. But I actually make a lot of freestyle raps. It's funny, Dan, you might not know this, but Dan, he loves rap, and he used to record himself just rapping like other just musicians' raps and so on. And me, I just think of, I'm a big rap person as well, but I just think of like my own freestyle raps in my head. You probably never see them. Maybe you'll even never see them, or I'll release an album. But I just think of freestyle raps and so on, and it's just I quite like the science of rap. There's actually a book called How to Rap. I forget who the writer is, but I think has a forward or something by Cool G Rap and some other people, and it really breaks down rapping and rhyming and the science behind it. And it is like, really, you wouldn't realize how much can go into it if you listen to certain types of rappers like MF Doom or something. It's pretty crazy. So I think I'm a fan of that kind of thing in general, and there's a lot of overlap. So I suppose I'm always thinking about things, and I listen to a lot of rap, and I think about how they use the syllabic rhymes and things like that. So I think if your mind is in the right place, it makes it easier to do things. But for the most part, it needs to come out of your personality. I'm quite a ridiculous person in general, so I think that benefits the kind of stuff I do.
It's always amazing to me to think with calls like that, and with other people's sort of quote unquote iconic calls, where it's like, well, that seemed perfect at the time, but what if it didn't work out, right? What if they were trying to build the pyramids? Oh, they got Stewie. There was enough clay. Or it's the Big Apple. Snacks is hungry. He starved to death. He didn't get that 4K or whatever it was, right? So it's always amazing for me to think like that almost just didn't work. You have to know when to bring it out, I guess.
Yeah, and I also think that, again, I don't think everyone can do those kind of invested things, because let's say it does go wrong. It depends on the situation. Sometimes humor is not always appropriate, and I think that in part, I think that Dan and I have been. Well, before that final, I think we were typecast a little bit because of how we might commentate in our studio, for example. But we're capable of a very many different types of commentary, and we will do what we feel is appropriate at the right time. So, for example, if something went wrong there, it's not necessarily the time to jump in with a joke, because there's so much high tension, and you want to retain that sense of urgency, because that keeps people invested, right? It's almost like breaking the fourth wall if you're like, oh, well, let me just make a joke here, which a lot of people don't understand. So there are different ways. I think you need to be witty, essentially. A lot of people, well, I think in esports, it's still very young and people don't really know the way, but I think on lower levels, people see wit as penis jokes essentially. But for proper wit, I think you can get there, you can transition, and again, you just need to be the right type of person who has that personality. Otherwise, you're reaching basically. So someone like Matt, he's got the wit to just switch into something else if he needs to, and I think I'll say the same about myself in a situation like that. So I don't think it's something you worry about. I think if you worry about it, you probably shouldn't be doing that in the first place. You just go with the flow, and you'll say the whole thing is you. So you just continue to be you, and you'll say the right thing.
It's fair enough. Continuing on this trend, one player who was playing in that grand final, who didn't quite go all the way, unfortunately, was Nico, who is another guy we're going to be doing a bit of a project on. And I wonder if I could ask you a few questions about him. Namely, when we profile players here at theScore eSports, one issue that we run into a lot, I find, is what makes this player this player? Yeah, he's great. Yeah, here's some results. Yeah, here's what he did to X team during Y tournament. But when it comes to, let's talk about Nico for this one. What is the Nico magic? How is Nico magic different from simple magic or Kenny S magic? You know what I mean?
I think partly for Nico, it is temperament. You can see, like, when things don't go their way, when they were close, when he feels like they should, you can see it on his face. There were certain moments in that final, for example, when he rolls his eyes like he's the Undertaker, and he really cares about what's going on, but he has a temperament to focus within the game. So, like, if you see, like, when things go wrong for Kenny, you can see how much emotion is on his face. It's brutal to watch that sometimes, but I don't think you'll see Nico go that far. I think he holds it together a lot more, and he's just very. So I don't think pressure really gets him at all. He's always going to perform regardless of what the stakes are. He will perform the same, it seems to me, all across the board. And I think you only see, as good as he is on a consistent basis, I think you only see a glimmers of what he can do. I remember there was a 1 versus 5 he did with a Deagle from the headshot position on Cash on B at ELEAGUE, which was just the most bizarre round. It's like, okay, maybe he gets 2 kills there. He killed the whole team. And I was like, what the hell am I watching? What is this? He seems to have unlimited power, but he kind of just doesn't always show it. He shows what he needs to show. But how like what his ceiling is, I have no idea. I remember when he used to play on mouse sports, and there were some rounds where I think one issue he had was that he was too good for the team, and it was better for them to play with a unit, whereas there were some rounds on their T side, for example, where they'll just be all holding, and he would try to make something happen on his own. So he understands what he's capable of, but he needs the team around him to reach that level. But what is the Nico magic? I think almost like Cold Zero. I think it's how consistent he is as a player and how high that consistency is, but also what he's capable of beyond that, which can win you an unlikely round, which he's very capable of doing and does all the time. So I would say that some different players, and it depends on their role in the team also, but they will have the same thing going on where they're capable, their consistency level is here, their ceiling is here. So even if they don't have the whole unit to achieve something together, they can still do it on their own. So I think there will be some crossover in these players, but he's just, I don't know, he's like granite. I think he's one of the most solid players that you can have in your team.
He's like granite. I like that. This will definitely not make it into our piece of content, but I have to ask, because you said you like wrestling. You just made an Undertaker reference. If Nico was a wrestler from any time period, who would he be?
Ooh, that's hard because WWE is not the best right now, and the storylines are not there.
You can go 90s. You can go 90s. You can go New Japan. Anything goes.
Bret Hart.
Oh wow!
I'd pick a Bret Hart.
Damn.
Because he's solid. He's dependable. He's very, very good at what he does, and he's definitely one of the best. And again, he's consistent. I think if you excellence of execution and all that, solid and consistent. I think Bret Hart's a good pick.
You might also call Nico a sharpshooter.
Very good. Very good.
There it is.
6 out of 10.
Oh, 6? Come on. All right.
It's better than your intro, Colin. Take what you can get.
Okay, you know what? We're seeing an upward trend here, guys. By the end of the podcast, I'll get a very positive rating from Bardolph. Maybe an 8 out of 10. Just continuing on the historical trend, even more, going even farther back in time. We're working on a project also about the coaching ban of 2016.
Yes, actually, Colin, if you wouldn't mind me taking this, because I'm actually super interested in this, because we're actually approaching very soon. Actually, I realized this morning. We're approaching the 2-year mark, I think, on that decision, and I think that happens in August. So
it's in August,
a couple weeks from now. And I'm wondering, last I remember, do ECS and FACEIT still allow coach communication, spectating the way it was prior to Valve's decision?
Unless I'm not going crazy, we do allow it, yeah. So you can communicate freely. I mean, I'm pretty sure we do.
Okay.
Yeah, but to be honest with you, my memory is very bad. So I'm afraid of saying something which is incorrect, purely because I have a considerable difficulty sleeping. When I was in a China event, for example, I slept maybe an hour a day, quite literally, and almost fell asleep diving in Bali afterwards. So my memory is really bad, but I'm pretty sure it's still the same, yes.
All right. Well, regardless of that, I'm wondering. I think we've had enough time to certainly see the effects, and I'm kind of wondering, kind of in your take, because you said a lot around. If I'm not mistaken, you said a lot of stuff about it when the decision was made, and I'm wondering, kind of looking back now over the last couple of years, what the effects have been to you as somebody who watches and pays such close attention to the game.
I don't think there is necessarily a right or wrong decision with this, because I think that you can have different goals for one's point of view or the other point of view. I think if you have coaches being able to talk all the time, you'll probably get the best possible counter-strike being played. But I think if you don't have the coaches able to talk all the time, there's additional pressure on. I think it changes the format of things. I think there's additional pressure on the players on the server. I think that from a storytelling point of view, I think it's arguably better, because I think in a perfect world, if the in-game leader can be the coach essentially, then you have 5 mercenaries as your players, just the best players in their roles potentially. And I think while that's cool to talk about fraggers, I think that if your man is on the server, then I think it's, I don't know. I really think even with these points, you can think one way or another, but I think it probably makes for better and varying profiles of players, storylines, and it changes the makeup of teams that you would otherwise have for sure. So I don't feel strongly either way. I don't feel the need for us to limit. I don't feel the need to mirror rule changes just for the sake of, because they made a change. I don't like the knee-jerk reaction. Oh, let's change this immediately. So even if the map pool changes, for example, just to go off topic for a second, we will consider what the most appropriate time to do it is, as opposed to, oh, let's change it today. So that's why we haven't changed the coaching thing. But I think it gives you more focus on different parts of the machine, if you will, of a team, and I think there's an ability about it, perhaps a romance, and so I don't feel strongly either way. I mean I'm happy with both, and I think maybe. So I want to stop short of saying it's for the better, in my opinion, because again, that depends on how you measure what better is. If it's simply better Counter-Strike, then you may say coaches should talk all the time, but you have to consider different perspectives. Yes, that's one, but as a spectacle with tentacles, running off of information like storytelling, like making VTs. Things like that, talking points on a desk, maybe there are more the way it is now, maybe there aren't. it's 50-50. So I think both sides could be argued forever. But I have no big issue with how things are at the moment.
Do you think, given that like you said, right, this changes, obviously it's changed the way people have built their teams, it changes the way the game is played to a certain extent. Do you ever wonder if it creates, because I was just thinking this when you were talking, like it creates sort of separate meta games at different events where you end up like, okay, at a major, maybe a team with this spectacular coach, you know, can go a little further. A team with a spectacular, or rather a team with a spectacular in-game leader can go a little bit further than they could at, say, you know, a third-party event like an ECS that allows coaching.
Maybe. Well, it depends on your team's support structure, I would say. Just to add to the previous point, if you look at the excitement around, like the excitement from analyst points of views, I've wanted to see existence back in top flight Counter-Strike for the longest time. I know Thorin was a fan and is a fan as well. So this gives you, him being back gives you tons of talking points. But if all those people were relegated to positions outside the game, I don't think you would really have those talking points as much. Now, could you repeat your question again?
Yeah, no worries. I was wondering about, you know, do you think that this creates, again, a separate kind of meta game at you know, a Valve event versus a third party event? Can one team do better at one another?
I think that you can get to the point where certain in-game leaders, you will look at where they are playing on the CT side and you will target them as a weak point. For sure, teams definitely do this against certain other teams. Maybe it depends on their performance in the last month or two, but the way things are now, yes, sometimes the in-game lead, like if the in-game leader is playing towards B, isn't the strongest player, may get targeted. So I think that creates some really, really interesting talking points for analysts. And if a CT side is aware, okay, like I'm being targeted as the in-game leader, let's shuffle the position around or take them by surprise or something. Those are that for sure changes the meta, absolutely. Where you might not get that if you had, let's say, a FaZe clan with no in-game leader in the game, you know, out of game leader, if you will. So I think it does have a significant meta change, and that makes for deeper levels of Counter-Strike, if you will. So I find that more interesting.
You've referred to it, I think, a couple of times as saying, you know, it creates a better Counter-Strike. Can you kind of elaborate? Like, what? Obviously, right, you have more strategy. You know, if somebody with a higher level of seeing the game can make different calls. But what makes it better, right? What makes it deeper for you having that or not having that, as it were?
Let's take when Threat was on NIP, for example. If he could talk the entire time, I think you probably would have seen a lot less roster changes for Ninjas in Pajamas, and they would have been a lot more successful, just because the man is an absolute cerebral beast. But if he can't communicate during the round, then, like, when you're playing a game of Counter-Strike, if you are if you have a tactical mind, then as the rounds go on, you'll have a general feeling for things. If your team communicates well, then and you understand. What is like if you watch me stream, I basically shout at my team pretty much all the time, because let's say somebody kills somebody, they might not communicate where that person has been picked off, but these are things the casuals might not realize. But all those pieces of information, if you communicate those as soon as they happen, like if you hear someone running somewhere else and you communicate that and so on, then the tactical people can build a picture of the round and have a mental image as to how that round progresses, and then they can use that as evidence for future rounds, and they can take decisions based on that, and they can give the other team evidence of something, and then maybe play off of that evidence in a future round and so on. So if you're standing behind 5 players, you don't necessarily need, I mean, you'll still have the comms, but you can see what everybody's doing at the moment. So where people are falling down in communication, or they just don't understand what is valuable to an in-game leader, you have that with you all the time. You can take the mid-round calls and see what everyone's doing. You don't need to ask someone. Like, there's a significant difference with asking someone what situation they're in and just looking at what they're doing, but you can see everything else at the same time. You can make much faster decisions. You can take better decisions, and much faster, because you don't need to necessarily ask everybody what's going on. You can just see everyone at the same time. So in terms of mid-round calls, late-round calls, it has to be better if you are the coach and you can communicate the whole time, because you have essentially complete information as far as your team is concerned. You can't watch all 5 screens at the same time, but then you have the addition of them actually communicating with each other. Whereas if you're in the game itself, depending on how good you are at an in-game leader and at multitasking, well, you have to look at the radar a hell of a lot more, and you'll often see people dying while looking at the radar, especially in-game leaders. So you have to look at the radar a lot more. You have to think about what the rest of your team are doing a lot more, and you can't focus on your situation a lot more. And if you are taking up the same position, let's say on a T side versus a CT, you're engaging the same person again. You consider, if you don't have to focus on anything else, if you're a turret, then you can think about, again, your behavior in previous rounds, their behavior in previous rounds, where they're likely to be, how you think they might change things up on this round based on what they and you have done in the previous round and so on. All that thinking gets compromised when you are the in-game leader in the game. So your efficiency at everything you're doing goes down. Whereas if you're playing but you're not the in-game leader, obviously what you're doing goes up, and you'll have your drills. You'll know at this time I'm going to be engaging in this fashion or not engaging in this fashion, and then you wait for further instructions. So everyone is able to perform at a higher efficacy because you have more people doing the same amount of jobs, right? So you're kind of sharing more resources among less people if the person standing behind is not the person doing the in-game leading. So in that sense, it's a numbers game. So in that sense, you will get better Counter-Strike, but that doesn't necessarily mean... I mean, there are ways where it makes for better storytelling, and there's ways where it doesn't necessarily, because the struggle is a talking point and is a story to tell when the in-game leader is having trouble in the game.
Fair enough. Well said. Dan, I think you got what you needed for that one.
Absolutely. I also learned a lot. As somebody who is my few forays into actually playing Counter-Strike have been terrible and just enjoys watching it. I feel like I've learned a lot.
I didn't know you've even ever played.
I've tried. Listen, I've tried to play. I've tried to play everything. I'm very bad at it. I play fighting games because I can't play team games. I just can't.
Well, you're pretty damn good at fighting games, so you definitely get a pass on that one. James, I wanted to ask you about a gentleman that we've had on this show at least 3 times now. We've had him in the office, and we always enjoy having a really good conversation with him, and that's Matt Trivet, a.k.a. Sadokist. He took a hiatus from casting a little while ago, and I think everyone listening knows the details of what spawned that. But I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you guys were the first to employ him after he came out of his hiatus for ECS finals. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because I saw on Twitter you came out and sort of owned it, so to speak. You said, I believe it was Ultra David who tweeted something about it, and you said, hey, listen, I hired him, is there a problem? So I wanted to ask you what your thought process was on that.
You guys had one how many times? 3 times?
We've had him on 3 times. Looking at him being the first
How many
four-time
times
guest.
have you had me on, bitch?
Oh,
Wow.
shit.
What's this favoritism about?
Oh, shit.
Why are you trying to hold me down? You guys are the man.
No joke.
Am I the man?
No
Fuck.
joke. I asked Colin, like, hey, why have we not had Bardolph on the podcast? Just like, he just didn't really give me an answer. So I will blame Colin for this, because I took the reach here.
I am getting ganged
Colin
up
is
on.
the man. Screw you guys. Anyway, back to the question. I know Ultra David, obviously, from the fighting game community and stuff, and it's because I know him. I found it extremely irritating because he said that Matt said what he said in a, and I quote, legit attacking capacity. It's like, what exactly are you saying? Are you saying that he's trying to be racist and be like racially offensive? I mean, I know Matt, right? So I have a better understanding of what he's doing than other people. So I don't know if I can say from neutral position what it would look like, right? Because basically, if you look at I don't even know if he was talking to somebody in particular or just answering a general chat question. I'm pretty sure it was the latter. But the way he said it is basically like the way I said bitch there. I'm not saying that he can say it or he should say it, but that is the fashion in which he was using it. So he's not like, oh, you are a black person, you are an N-word. Like, that's not what he is doing. He is just trying to be edgy. I think that we are all in the public eye and we all compete with each other, and I think that we all understand that we are personalities, if you will, and we need to have personality. And I think, again, I'm not saying that what he did is good or bad. Obviously, it was pretty stupid, but I think he's just trying to be edgy. Obviously, he didn't take the right path of doing that, but he's not trying to be malicious. He is not a malicious person. He is someone like there's a big group of us who go to different events all the time, and it's like we're all chummy. We're not all best friends. There can be some arguments and so on. Not everybody gets on, but that's understandable because we're essentially a thrown together group of people. But like Matt is someone who I have a fair amount in common with. I've gone to play, like a lot of people, maybe it's because they travel so much or they're tired or so on, but a lot of people after an event will just go to the hotel and drink. Not really my cup of tea. I'd be really bored doing that, so I don't really do that. But like Matt is someone I'll go and do something with because we have stuff in common. And so like we went and played Top Golf together once when we were in Atlanta and stuff. So I don't necessarily do that with everybody. So I know the point is, like, I know he's a good guy. I know he's a nice guy. I know he's not a malicious guy. And I know what he was trying to do and what he was not trying to do. To me, it's obvious that he's not being racist. He's not. He was drunk, but I don't care. He's not throwing out racial slurs. It is, but not in a malicious sense. Like he's saying it like he's some I don't know, like a rapper or he's trying to be edgy or something. So the key is the purpose of what he's doing. Yes, it was pretty stupid. No, he's not being malicious. Legit attacking capacity. If you mean he's being racist, no, he's saying some dumb words, yes, but he's not trying to be racially offensive by saying that. To me, that is clear whether you know him or not. If it's not clear, if you don't know him, then I'm telling you that it is because I do know him. So that's ultimately the crux of the situation. If I thought he was being racially abusive to someone, of course I wouldn't hire him. That would be. I mean, why would I do that? But I know that he isn't, which is why, people. Some people won't understand, but I'm not going to try and argue with every single person on Twitter. I had some people repeatedly message me stupid stuff, but I'm not going to engage that because it's the internet, and there will always be an endless queue of stupid people who want to engage you and not listen to anything you have to say. So that it is what it is. But I think I'm of sound mind and I think I made a fair decision.
Fair enough. As in your official capacity as someone who procures talent for FACEIT events, was there ever a conversation? So you obviously know him personally, but was there ever a conversation with people in the organization who do not have the pleasure of knowing him personally, where there was a question of whether employing him at this time for this event was maybe problematic, or did anyone indicate that it was, I don't know, more trouble than it's worth, like that kind of vibe?
No, I think I'm in a fortunate position where my judgment is trusted a lot by the people who could overrule me, for example. So I have never been told or asked not to do something ever in my time at FACEIT. So they trust me. They trust me with the responsibility. They give me creative freedom in every sense, be it who I decide to pick, and other things. So like the stuff we output on our show and videos and so on. So no one really. I mean, if there was any discussion, I would have been the person to instigate it. And I'm the kind of person who I would discuss my intentions internally because it's reasonable that people may have concerns, but nobody would raise them to me. I guess I'm dependable in that sense, so they don't really need to take the initiative on that.
I see. Moving away from Matt for a little bit, but sort of along the same subject lines. Oftentimes, there are people who point to esports or specific esports scenes and claim a lack of diversity, a lack of visible minorities in them. And as a guy, again, who's in the capacity to hire talent, to procure people who are in front of the camera, I wanted to get your thoughts on that, both in terms of sexual diversity, racial diversity, and any other kind of diversity, frankly.
Okay, so in terms of talent, in terms of people working on camera, I don't look to fill quotas in diversity. I mean, everyone will have, well, people will have their agendas, right? Be it more women, more minorities, blah blah blah. Um, but for me, it is about two things. One, the talent and skills to do the job required, and B, being a good fit for our company. We have a certain image, and we want to have people join us who meet who we want to be, who we are, who we want to be, but and who we aspire to be, and they all need to kind of meet that message and go in the same direction. So, um, so in terms of diversity, I mean, I don't really look at that. I remember, I think it was DreamHack Cluj. There was some I don't know. I don't remember who exactly it was, but it was there was some article written because there was a picture of all of us on the desk and it was all dudes and like, oh my god, they're sexist or some crap. And it's like, you're not sexist by default. That's freaking stupid. We have, in terms of gender, we have some like we have Freya who works for us. She did stage for us. At the ECS finals recently, and she does voiceovers for our videos as well, and there'll be more females involved, but it's not because they're females, because they're good at what they do, because they have a great energy, and because they fit the kind of company that we are. So it doesn't matter if they're women, men, or whatever, robots on wheels. So again, I'm not trying to fit a quota, but I think it's probably easier for me to say because I'm a mixed race person. If I was just some white dude with blue eyes, then maybe the answer would have to be different. But for me, I can say what I want, bitch, because my mum's black, so it's all good. But yeah, so diversity in that sense, yeah, I don't know that anyone's not trying to hire a particular race or blah blah blah. I always wonder though with the ESL any key thing, right? They're like, diversity and all this racial stuff. All they do is stuff for chicks. Where's the mixed race stuff? Where's the black people stuff? I want to play something. No, but yeah, diversity. I think it's always nice to have female energy. I think in a show, I think it's not something that male energy can necessarily provide, and it can be a nice contrast from one segment to another. So I think it can certainly help in terms of racial. I don't know, whatever is my. I don't know whatever is my response. I don't know what to tell you.
Hey, that was a quite an articulate, well thought out response. So don't sell yourself short on that one. Now those were some pretty tough questions, so I feel like it's incumbent upon me to throw you a bit of a softer ball as we begin to wrap up here. ESEA or FACEIT? Tell me which one is better and why we should all play FACEIT.
I don't think we need to talk about other companies. I think we can just talk about ourselves, really. I will say that competition is good and it forces everybody to raise their game. I think we've brought that competition for the most part, but I think we already had the right attitudes in terms of constantly improving and so on. I have had the pleasure of seeing things even 6 months ago, 9 months ago, which is still not released now. So as far as much of these updates that you've seen, as cool as the hubs are, in terms of how accessible they make Counter-Strike, I think that's the biggest thing. I'm just marveling at the hubs because for those of you who I don't think we've done the best job of communicating what hubs are. So for those of you who are not familiar, hubs are basically sub-communities within the platform in each region where I have a hub where I can play with people that watch my stream, and I'm laughing because I have like 200 people in there and I've never played with them once. But I can do that if I want to. But the real joy of the hubs is, I think where you have hubs in particular nations, I think that is so powerful a tool. One, because it obviously they all lead to FPL, which is a great aspiration for any player. But two, I think they also nurture all the local scenes in that let's say you're from Hungary, for example. Let's say there's a Hungary national pugging system. People always complain about playing with people from certain other countries, but if you're playing with people, well, if you have the choice to play with people only from your own country, not only is it great for communication, especially if it's a non-English country, and it's not a big place like, let's say Latin America has Spanish and Portuguese, right? Let's say, obviously, Europe has a lot of different languages, so we'll take Hungary as one. Obviously, communication is a lot better, but also you can make friends with people within your nation, and maybe you end up going to a LAN with those people. Obviously, I go to iSeries when I have time with people from the UK with my friends, and you can develop some friendships, and they can take you a hell of a long way, as really my friendships did from way back in the day. I've played Counter-Strike for like 13 years or something, so I still play with some of those people now. So I think that's a really beautiful thing, because that is genuinely connecting people, and that's absolutely fantastic. I know Launders, for example, he plays with people from his stream community, and I know there's at least one guy there who was a guy on his own at home and was lonely and was somewhat suicidal. He had suicidal thoughts and so on, but he found the community of just the stream community of Launders' Boxer stream community, and played Counter-Strike with them and made friends with them. A bit toxic, his own words, he was a bit toxic at first, and then he overcame that and just got into a happier place, and credits that little community for kind of saving his life. And I'm not saying that it's hubs will do something to that extreme, but it's what it's the potential of it to do, just to connect people, is a very powerful thing, and that can go a long way. And if that's just people playing Counter-Strike together, making little teams and entering tournaments on FACEIT, then it's done its job, because I think that is amazing. Like, you all guys will never understand how much I love Counter-Strike, and just to know that this is happening in these little pockets is awesome to me. It's absolutely awesome. And on top of that, things like, let's say there's a major qualifier. Okay, let's take a PGL major, for example. If any major which is not run by FACEIT but has qualifiers on the FACEIT platform, I always enter. And even if you don't have a team of 5 people, even if like you two together needed 3 people, you could queue as a pair in the last 30 minutes, and it would pair you with other people who are also queuing and need players. So you could have a scrim team in a major qualifier, but you can still participate, and again, you can make friends from that, or just have the joy of being part of it. Even if you get absolutely smashed by another team of scrimmers or a team or whatever, the fact that is possible is amazing. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's awesome. Those are the best things for me about FACEIT.
Well said. I certainly agree with your sentiment about competition being good for everyone. So, James, I feel like you're my only hope for this, but when are we going to see a CSGO wrestling crossover event?
I feel like my commentary is very inspired by wrestling, which is why I don't think there's really anyone like me in the space that we're in. Because I love wrestling, so I will go over the top and ridiculous, and sometimes I try to get the heel commentator thing going on, but that's kind of hard to do. But the CEO event, the fighting event, that was pretty awesome. Even though Jabali's always been an egotistical maniac, it's really great to see what he has done with that event. So more power to him. I look forward to seeing what they do next year. I think a CSGO event would be more difficult, but I mean, Neymar is a big poster boy for it. Not quite wrestling, but there's something. So yeah, I think things like Counter-Strike should be heading towards pop culture in the way that I would say Street Fighter or classic Street Fighter has. Obviously, as a violent game, there's like some taboo there, but I do hope that eventually we will overcome them, because people will eventually realize that nobody cares about the gun. It's not Grand Theft Auto. You're not running over people in the street. It's not mindless violence. It's a tactical shooter. And when I think it's very clear the demonstration of skill if you sit down and watch it for 5 minutes. An example is that when we were doing the finals in Boston, so we were on an elevated stage, and we were standing up because we tried to always stand up because it's good for your diaphragm and projecting your voice. Sitting down for commentary is bullshit. And so we're looking up and kind of commentating from the big screen and from the computer. But anyway, behind us there is like a handler, if you will. He's got a one-ear headset on in case he needs to like move people around or whatever. But he's also there in case we need drinks and so on. And it was the most hilarious thing where we were in the last map of the finals, and I needed some water because we had no water left. And I was trying to get his attention, but he was so engrossed in what was going on because Dan was commentating at the time that like I was putting my head directly in his line of sight because he was watching the screen like this, and he was just moving out of the way to see what was going on, and completely just didn't register that he had to help the person, you know. And that was amazing to me. And I think that Counter-Strike has places to go in that regard. There will be, I think it's weird with all this stuff Turner has done. I feel like there hasn't really been that much pushback from mainstream media as people may have expected. Speaking of wrestling, I think Turner were the best company to do that in America. Obviously, Ted Turner used to have WCW, so
yeah, WCW, man.
Exactly, so they get it, right? But there wasn't, or there hasn't really been that much, if any, pushback. I'm sure at some point, if it got to like Fortnite levels in the media, you'd get some religious morons and maybe some government ones. But those are clashes we can have. We can take them on and tell them to shut up. But I feel like, well, I'm waiting for it to get there and those clashes to happen. So I think Counter-Strike is there to be accepted as people's mental image of gaming evolves and they understand this scene. Because right now we're like the trendy kind of headline to put, you know, gaming is going to be worth X billion in this year and blah 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 blah. At first we had years of the sports question, which is like just if someone's going to write something, it's going to be that, and it's going to be a crap article and go nowhere. We've gone beyond that point now, that we got to the numbers point where the numbers are undeniable, but we need to go beyond the numbers point as a kind of culture point and have those discussions. So maybe the crossovers like that will come in time, but you know, that just gave me the idea of where the kind of trajectory CSGO needs to go on, that deserves to go on, and hopefully it makes it there.
I understand. That is the worst question, by the way, the sports thing. That is the most useless fucking question I could possibly think of. Also, I love Turner, I love ELEAGUE, I love WCW, but I do not want to see a last minute FaZe Clan substitution of David Arquette in the next event. Hopefully we can avoid that.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. James, we know you've got to get going and do your stuff with FACEIT, your keyboards, your shoes, your wrestling, your fighting games, all that good shit. I want to thank you so much for making time for us. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Finally.
and we'll make it a second time if you will have us. Of course, I don't presume.
Yeah, I'm watching these numbers. I don't want to see any more bias.
Of course not. We're keeping it all balanced. Make sure we get everybody, everybody equally. But yeah,
Dan, you keep me honest. Okay?
Yeah, I'm here now that I'm doing booking. I'm the booker now, so I'm keeping everybody honest.
Yeah.
All right.
You don't want me out there calling you guys the man. Just think about that.
Yeah. Please don't.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care, James. We got unexpected wrestling talk in that one, Dan. That was pretty good.
I imagine that was very exciting for you, Colin.
Are you proud of me that I didn't hijack the podcast
to rap and wrestle? Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
But I do think that you need to get us out of this room quite fast. So
yeah, that's right. This room tends to heat up faster than most, unfortunately. Getting pretty sweaty in here. Once again, I do want to thank our guest, James Bardolph, for speaking with us. It's been awesome, and we are going to have him on again if he doesn't hate us by now. For everyone who watched, for Josh Burry, who's not here, for Daniel Rosen, I'm Colin McNeil saying until next time on the theScore eSports podcast, GG. Thanks for watching. If you want more great content just like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button.